They were still smarting for a solution to the biggest problem during the War of 1812, that of American men, when finding their muskets defective for the lack of a part replacement, dropped the weapon on the field and fled. Hall's arrival was met with hostility and fierce, dedicated obstruction by the local powers that be throughout his 20-year tenure at Harper's Ferry. The Armory's head, James Stubblefield, when Hall arrived, took pride in the fact that he could make a musket by his hands and tools, perfect unto itself in 3 months, replete with beautiful inlay. He could only see before him a sharp-talking innovator, an undiluted Yankee, who challenged all that Stubblefield held dear and was allowed autonomy in his own pilot operation that could draw funding away from Stubblefield's armory operation. Often, Stubblefield and his like-minded successors preserved the jobs doled out at the armory to unqualified cronies who were of the right political party, and taking any congressionally mandated budget cuts out of Hall's operation, leaving Hall with his skilled workmen unpaid for months. But his team, under his leadership, inexorably carried out Hall's visionary instructions to perfection. While the Federal Armory on the Potomac side of town slopped along doing bad work or no work for pay, a haven of slacker political appointees who knew nothing about the work required except for the attached benefits. The federal inspector, General John Wool, visited both the Armory and Hall's rifle works and reported that Hall's works functioned with great regularity, order, and system, whilst the Armory was the reverse. I have succeeded in establishing methods for fabricating arms exactly alike and with economy by the hands of common workmen, and in such manner as to ensure a perfect observance of any established model, and to furnish in the arms themselves a complete test of their conformity to it. Hall's greatness lay in the 4 years from 1822 to 1826, when he worked exhaustively to create more than 63 gauges of supreme accuracy down to 1/1000th of an inch tolerance. He also designed his own machines, and even machines that made the part-making machines, so that they regularly produced results free of what Hall called minute errors caused by changes in temperature, by abrasions and subtle variations caused when machines had been set in large wooden frames. Ostracized by the town fathers, Hall had lots of time to do his work, and Statira had a growing family to keep busy while ignored. The problem of true interchangeability did not bend to the will, imagination, and intellect of the formidably motivated John Hall either quickly or easily. He believed he pinpointed a method of measurement to replace the old method that always failed to make two complex things exactly alike. Hall wrote what he called one of his most important contributions. In making a part of an arm like a prescribed model, the difficulty is exactly the same as that which occurs in making a piece of iron exactly square. In such a case, a man would square the second side by the first, the third by the second, and the fourth by the third, but on comparing the fourth side with the first, it will be found that they are not square. The cause is that in squaring each side by the preceding side, there is but imperceptible variation, and the comparison of the fourth with the first gives the sum of the variation of each side from a true square. Hall separated this single action into one, an unchanging standard, gauges, and two, an action then taken in the workflow determined by the gauge reading. To the workman, two yes or no decisions were required on each level, whereby an unskilled operator would make a perfect weapon. Each gauge was a pair of measures, today called go or no-go gauges for each part, one gauge showing a measurement that was the maximum acceptable, the other a gauge showing the minimum acceptable measure. The workman made two unvarying choices per part. This bearing strategy leads to Hall's first breakthrough: extraordinarily accurate gauges with which to confirm the accurate size of any one of 63 different parts of a rifle. But how does one achieve such unprecedented precision needed to really achieve interchangeability, or Hall and Bomford's uniformity principle? In his landmark work, Hall's endless tweaking and trials led him to a historic conclusion. If you can harness water power, and you can direct the greatest amount of water power precisely to a manufacturing end, you can manufacture arms possessing a precision that achieves true interchangeability. In his machine shop, he created a hanging forest of pulleys, looped with leather belts, all of which was attached to a shaft leading to water wheels, scooping up the river's water, capturing its might. He could capture more raw power by adding leather belts and widening them, increasing the belt's traction much in the way a modern-day automobile's wider and thicker tire can. So, when he was transmitting much great force through the leather belts and pulleys, the more substantial belts would also not stretch and wear out too quickly. He could reduce, that is, or generally regulate the power transmitted to the machine with similar substitutions. At the suggestion of examiners in 1826, Hall improved this power yield of his pulleys and leather belts by balancing the wheels of the pulleys in a way much like today when lead weights are applied to the rim of a tire to balance it. Wrote his examiners in 1826, "This is done by loading the light side of the pulley wheel with lead or any heavy substance till an equilibrium takes place, by which means there is the tendency in the revolutions, however rapid, to wear more on one side of their journals or gudgeons than on the other." General Wool of the Ordnance Department reported that not only could the machine's moving parts operate well at 3,000 revolutions per minute, the speed could also be increased or reduced at will. The transmitted power was not wasted and was better directed to the specific manufacturing task. Drop hammers in the die casting could deliver 10 blows each second on a softened piece of iron. The increased water power was sent to these machines that were mounted on massive wooden frames. So great were the realized new levels of power that the machines vibrated or shook, making precision manufacture impossible. Hall took the next step. He contracted ironworks. In the mid-1820s, he sent drawings and patterns, among others, to the Antietam Ironworks on the Potomac River for heavy iron castings, carriages, and frames to stabilize his machines. The solidity, mass, and great weight of Hall's all-important metal cutting or milling machines provided the stability during their operation allowing the very rapidly spinning cutter to make clean and even deep cuts in the metal that met the extremely demanding standard for interchangeability. This capability allowed Hall to make cuts in the finer parts of his 1819 patent rifle that had 23 parts in just the lock. The gauges could be case hardened to protect their surfaces and edges. A feat never before accomplished. For this, he is widely credited for completing the foundation for the American Industrial Revolution. The knowledgeable committee of James Carrington, Luther Sage, and Colonel James Bell, based on 3 weeks of inspecting Hall's operation in December 1826, published their report the following month. Historian Merritt Roe Smith wrote, "It is doubtful Hall himself could have composed a more laudatory document." The next breakthrough would come shortly in 1834 when, using an exact copy of these priceless gauges, Simeon North, an inventor in Middletown, Connecticut, jointly produced with Hall interchangeable rifles from his completely different work site, proving the needed precision lay not in any man, but in the gauges entirely. One reason Hall's ideas spread so quickly was the Ordnance Department until the Civil War had the wise and novel stipulation in their lucrative contracts that the contractor had to share all their innovations with the public and any interested party. Both Hall and Simeon North agreed to the terms. John Harris Hall, who died exhausted in 1841, never saw the true wonder of his efforts, namely, production of a rifle on a truly vast scale, so evident to us today. So forgotten is this history-making man that no image has yet surfaced of him. On October 7th of the year of Hall's death in 1841, his widow, Satira Hall, who would die 13 years later, wrote Colonel Talcott at the Ordnance Department in Washington, reflecting on what her husband's heroic sacrifice and patriotism meant. No one can know as I do the great sacrifices of both comfort and interest he has made. No one but myself can imagine his days of toil and nights of anxiety while inventing and perfecting his machinery. Never did he for 1 minute hesitate to sacrifice his own interest when he thought it would interfere with the interests of the government. Had he in 1820 listened to the proposals of foreign governments, he might now be enjoying health and prosperity. Yet he refused, all because he thought by so doing he should benefit his own government. Even more recently, friends and family visited the weed-choked graveyard with the stones for John and Satira Hall to pull the weeds away and restore their dignity for such a visionary man.